Alrighty guys, what's up? Welcome back to Birthright coverage. So now that we're finally done with the Bloodline series, we are moving on to playing the game as if you are a domain ruler, and there's a fair bit that is involved with that. And so that's one of the fun things about this campaign setting is really Birthright is a game within a game. Within a game, we've explored, there's the army and battle fighting aspect that has its, really own set of rules with fighting with the cards and stuff like that. Again, we've given you guys a couple of videos, brief videos on that. But the running a domain really is its own game, and you could, if you really wanted to, just play Birthright from that perspective. You really could sort of ignore the traditional role-playing part, D&D part of going on adventures. That certainly is something your character can do, whether they're a king or just a domain ruler or just really anybody. That certainly is there, but really, if you wanted to, this is a really fun and in-depth set of rules as far as running your domain, and really will test your abilities to see if you really could, do well as a domain ruler. So with that, we're going to jump in here. We're going to just do a high-level overview of a couple things for this video. So running a domain, a lot of it will involve what they call Regency, or Regency points more specifically. So we're just going to read this one exactly, because it is something, again, very unique to the setting and what kind of makes this part of the game tick. So Regency is the mystical power associated with blooded rulers and leaders. It's a blend of nobility, honor, and kismet that a true king wears like an invisible crown. If a character rules well and exemplifies the qualities of their alignment, their Regency is strong. The unseen aura of power helps them to do things that lesser mortals couldn't even dream about. Now, if a king rules poorly, then their Regency weakens. So in game terms, a character's Regency is measured by, you guessed it, Regency points, or RP. So in future videos, when we refer to RP, or if we don't just say Regency or Regency points, that's what we're talking about. During the game, you can use these to expand your domain, increase the power of your bloodline, etc., etc. There's a lot you can do with it, and really will need to do, but so can your opponents and other characters. So a couple of terms here. So you have Scions and Regents. Again, Regents are the blooded characters who can hold any kind of domain. So kingdoms, guilds, temples, set of sects, collections of magical power, etc. And they could often have titles, so like king, duke, queen, etc., etc. So we have all that. Now the unblooded characters or commoners, that's 99% of the population, right? So not everybody is going to be a regent. Now Scions, on the other hand, is kind of straddling between those two. So blooded characters, you have a descent from one of Cerullia's heroic bloodlines. Now you could be a regent, a relative of a regent, or a member of a bloodline that doesn't rule a domain. You do have your bloodline derivation and strength, but you don't. If you don't rule a domain, you don't accumulate Regency. So now you could, of course, luck into getting a campaign, or through your efforts, or sorry, not a campaign, getting a kingdom or a domain of some sort, and or through your own efforts, acquire that at some point. And that's part of the fun of starting as a maybe even a commoner who then somehow inherits a bloodline, and then they then fight their way into, or somehow work their way into, being a domain ruler. Or you could just be a relative of a regent, something happens to the person in power, and hey, it's your turn to take over. So there's just so many fun scenarios and ways to work that in here. So again, you can run any one part of Birthright. You can, again, just be a bog standard adventurer in this wonderful campaign setting. But there's just so many ways to weave and blend all the cool parts of the Birthright setting together. So that's a couple of quick things there. We've kind of already talked about regents and some of that in the character creation, but we'll revisit that later. You have what is called your domain, and those are in many different forms. Again, whether it's like a political territory, set of churches, guilds, ley lines, etc. But what does comprise your domain? Again, high-level overview here. So the provinces that you rule, holdings in those provinces, holdings in provinces ruled by other NPCs. Maybe temples don't always neatly fit within political borders. And then other assets like roads, castles, and armies. Now, realm could be one or more provinces. A province ruler is a recognized lord or political entity capable of making laws, executing justice, and performing other duties as a head of state. A domain composed entirely of guilds, temple, or source holdings is not a realm, right? Only domains with provinces can be called realms. So again, lots of intersecting terminology here, but worth keeping straight. We'll worry about the selecting thing later. We've, again, already covered all the domains in the core setting. But a lot of what we'll deal with, and we saw these numbers when we looked at, again, the domains already, as we took our tour through those, is the level, and that's very important. So the lower the level, the fewer people there are, and that could be a good or bad thing depending on what you need out of that. So a level 0 province is wild, unsettled, untenable, home to nothing more than widely scattered homesteads or even tiny villages. Overall population is less than 1,000. Okay. Now once we get to level 1 to 3, provinces that are thinly settled rural regions with small villages and 1 or 2 towns of 1,000 people or less. Population could be anywhere from 2 to 10 total. 4 to 6, try and get that glare off there. 4 to 6 are settled farmlands with small industries. Major towns may have populations of up to 5,000 people, and the overall population could be between 10 and 40,000. So, a couple more. And level 7 or greater, we didn't see too many of these, but again, we'll just use like Ilion as an example, 1 province domain, but a large city there. So densely settled, well-developed industries and major cities, populations could be 100,000 or more. So that gives you just some of the ideas of the levels. Again, 7 and above is few and far between, but the higher you rule them, the more, stuff essentially you can have in them as far as levels of like law, temples, guilds, etc. But typically the more settled an area gets, the lower, because we've essentially developed it, right? So it's not just, nature. So usually if the first number is very large, the second number will get smaller. And that's to represent, again, that sort of the natural, the nature, again, has been settled and civilized. And so that natural mystical energy, whatever you might call it, has lessened. So, for wizards, if they're in populated areas, typically they'll have ley lines that reach out far into the wilderness somewhere in other provinces, just to have access to higher magical energy. Now, conversely, a level 0 province could have like a 7 on the second number, and that means that it's just full of magical energy because it's not settled by humans and unspoiled. So here, again, another high-level overview of holding types. So we'll get into this in more detail. But you have law, guilds, and temples, and sources. Again, law is going to be very important for the political rulers. You got guilds for thieves, etc. Part of the economy. Temples, obviously, your different religions, and sources for wizards. And just like with the provinces, there are some interesting factors here as far as how many different types of given holding you can have. So in a province of level 1 to 3, only one region can control a particular type of holding. So you're not going to have a lot of people fighting for, and introducing a lot of different things in very sparsely settled areas, right? 4 to 6, you can have 1 or 2. Regions may divide the available slots. It doesn't have to be evenly divided, but that's where that competition comes in from potential rivals. 7 to 9, as many as 3 can divide that. Note that 0 level holdings don't count in these totals. So, and that gives you, again, just a quick overview of that. We'll definitely revisit that later. Assets, again, cover all kinds of things like roads, buildings, castles, etc. You have different fortifications that we'll get into, ley lines, lieutenants, roads. There's a lot here, trade routes, etc. So, and then provinces also have loyalty, which we'll talk about, because you do have to, again, there's a little bit of work involved with running a domain. So, but it's definitely takes some work, but it's fun once you get sort of everything under control. But everything really is on you. Do you want to be tax heavy, tax light? That'll affect the loyalty of your people, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, people are trying to agitate maybe against you and do other things that harm you within and without. So there's a lot of fun things to consider. So, easiest way to kind of explain all that in a nutshell, we'll have a follow-up video. Stay tuned on that. We're just going to run through this sample domain of Metaweir here, which we've covered, but not like this as far as getting into what all the numbers mean. So we'll have that in a follow-up video, but this is just a quick introduction to running a domain for you guys. Plenty more to come. Thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. We'll have more Birthright soon.